The fence rose overnight, like a steel wall cutting through my land. I stood on my porch watching the sun sink behind cold metal bars that weren't supposed to be there. My ranch was trapped, blocked off by an HOA that didn't own an inch of my property. And as the electric hum of that locked gate filled the silence, I knew one thing for sure. This wasn't just about fences anymore. It was war. Before we begin, please subscribe to my channel and hit that bell icon. The morning air was thick with mist as I rode out toward the southern edge of my ranch, just as the sun began crawling over the hills, bathing the pasture in a slow orange glow. My horse buck shifted under me, huffing steam into the cold morning like a locomotive ready to run. The smell of wet earth and cedar filled my lungs, grounding me in the quiet peace I had known all my life. This land had been in my family for 3 generations, and there was a certain rhythm to it, a sacred routine. But that morning, the rhythm broke. Buck stopped dead just before the tree line. I narrowed my eyes and saw something out of place. Metal, cold, gray, shiny. A fence, not the kind you throw up to keep cows in or coyotes out. No, this was tall and thick and brand new. It ran in a solid line right across my access road, like a blade slicing through a map. There was no gate, no signage, no warning, just a wall standing where it had no dam. Business. I slid off Buck and walked up to it. Boots crunching on gravel. My fingers touched the steel, still cool from the night. Welded panels, industrial bolts. Professional work, not some backyard job. This was deliberate. I scanned the area. No workers, no trucks, no note, just silence. And that silence felt louder than a scream. This road was my lifeline to the southern field, where the cattle grazed and where my ranch hand Manny was supposed to bring in supplies. Without it, we were cut off, and someone had gone to a lot of effort to make that happen. Without telling me, I stood there for a while, jaw clenched, eyes burning. Then I mounted Buck, turned him back, and headed straight for the HOA office. Only one person in town had the ego and audacity to pull something like this without so much as a knock on my door. Her name was Tracy Went, president of the Hidden Creek HOA High Heels, sharp-tongued clipboard, clutched like a weapon of divine judgment. She had taken the role of suburban queen and turned it into a dictatorship over trimmed lawns and mailbox paint colors. 5 years ago, the HOA bought up land adjacent to my ranch to build their little cookie-cutter kingdom. We had an understanding back then. I stayed on my land. They stayed on theirs. Until now, I stormed through the HOA office doors. The air inside smelled like printer toner and fake lavender. A young assistant barely looked up from her desk. I asked to see Tracy. She pointed toward the glass boardroom where the woman herself sat, flanked by her loyal minions in pastel blazers and fake smiles. Tracy glanced up from her tablet and gave me that thin-lipped smirk she reserved for when she thought she had the upper hand. I stepped into the room without waiting for an invite. "There is a fence across my access road," I said. She blinked slow like a cat playing with a cornered mouse. "Yes, we installed a new perimeter to protect the community from unmonitored rural traffic," she said. Unmonitored. That road runs through my land. She tapped her screen. Actually, that portion of the road technically touches HOA-managed land per our latest boundary updates. I stared at her, trying to keep my voice calm. That road has been used by my family for 70 years. Your maps mean nothing to history or decency. She looked bored already. We're modernizing Jake. Time to move on from your little cowboy fairy tale. I turned to the others in the room. Blank faces. No one would meet my eyes. They had already decided. Behind closed doors and legal loopholes. They drew a line through my life and called it progress. I left without another word. Outside, I gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles went white. Manny called. He said he tried to bring feed through the South Road and got turned around by a private security guard. The cows hadn't eaten since yesterday. It felt like a punch to the gut back at the ranch. I paced the barn. I looked at the old family maps on the wall, traced the roads with my fingers. This wasn't just about a gate. It was about control, about power. And Tracy had just thrown the first punch. That night I sat on the porch with a cup of bitter coffee, watching the stars. The fence stood there in the dark. Mocking me, I could hear the faint hum of electricity from the security lights they installed at the corner. Their land might have money, but I had roots, and something deeper. The next morning I saddled up again. Not to talk, not to argue, just to see, to feel, to breathe the edge of my world. One more time before deciding what came next, because if Tracy wanted a war, she just picked the wrong cowboy to start it with. 3 days passed, and the fence remained, like a scar across the land that refused to heal. Manny drove the long way around, hauling feed and supplies over rocky paths meant for deer, not trucks. The ranch was bleeding money and time, and every minute cost more than just fuel. It cost pride. It cost dignity. And every delay dug the knife deeper. I called the county, the sheriff, the land office. Each one passed the buck like it was a game of hot potato. They all said the same thing if the HOA filed paperwork and posted permits. There was nothing they could do until a civil suit went through. Civil suit? I had cows going hungry, and these pencil pushers wanted me to wait 6 months and pay a lawyer to fix what common sense should have stopped. Buck paced the edge of the fence, snorting. The cattle gathered near the southern fence line, confused by the barrier. Manny scratched his head and muttered in Spanish, said it felt like someone building a wall across the sky. I couldn't sleep. Every night I heard that electric hum. Every night I stared out past the porch and imagined Tracy sitting in her manicured kitchen, sipping herbal tea with that smug smile plastered on her face. She thought she won, thought I'd roll over like every other neighbor. She bulldozed with her contracts and charm. Then came the kicker. A letter in the mail with a Hidden Creek HOA stamp. Inside was a fine. They claimed I was storing industrial equipment visible from the community, and that my old tractor by the barn was an eyesore. $500. Due immediately, I read the letter 3 times. Each word felt like a slap. They were pushing harder and harder, trying to choke me with bureaucracy until I snapped or gave up. But I wasn't wired that way. That night, I walked the length of the fence under the moonlight. My boots left tracks in the frost. Halfway down, I spotted something new. A small metal gate. Locked padlock, thick as my thumb. Next to it, a tiny sign. Private access contact. HOA for entry. My blood ran cold. They knew exactly what they were doing, and now they were mocking me. I drove into town the next morning, parked across the street from the HOA clubhouse, and just watched. watched as Tracy strutted inside, watched as residents trickled in, and out-watched as the whole fake little kingdom ran like clockwork. She was the queen, and I was the stubborn old rancher refusing to kneel. But that meant she was predictable. And predictable people make mistakes. I needed information. More than just maps and permits. I needed to know who signed off, who installed the fence, who paid for it, and why they were so eager to shut me out now, after 5 quiet years. So I called in a favor. An old friend named Derek used to work in land development and knew his way around county records like a hound on a scent. Within a day, he had answers. Big ones, turns out. The HOA wasn't just updating boundaries, they were trying to secure funding for a new luxury gate at the southern end of their development. A private entrance. One that would require cutting through my ranch's access road, and the county had denied it twice, citing property rights. But that changed when Tracy's team proposed a new plan. One that rerouted traffic and claimed my access. Road was already under community oversight due to easement confusion. They buried it in footnotes, legal sleight of hand, but it was there. Clear as day. They didn't want the road. They wanted the money that came with the new gate and the promise of upscale image, and I was the only thing in their way. I stared at the printouts, at Tracy's signature, at the committee minutes, and something inside me shifted. The hurt turned to focus. The anger turned to fuel. I wasn't going to fight her in court. I wasn't going to beg the county. I was going to use her greed against her. The gate. That cursed metal gate she put up was her weakness, because if she wanted to control it, she had to claim it. If she claimed it, then it had to meet county code. If it met code, then it needed inspection and toll access and tax registration and a whole mess of red tape, all of which I could trigger with one simple move. I stood there at the edge of the fence. The sun dipped low, painting the horizon in blood red. I whispered to the wind, "You want to play games, Tracy? Then let's play, because if they were so eager to put up a gate, I was about to make them pay to walk through it." I started early the next morning, armed with a stack of county codes and a notebook filled with phone numbers. My plan was simple: turn that locked gate into a private toll road. A toll road with me collecting the fees. First step was calling the county. Transportation office, I asked about permits for private roads and gates. The woman on the line sighed, but confirmed that any private gate blocking access had to be registered and comply with specific safety and signage standards. Otherwise, it was considered illegal obstruction. I smiled inside. Tracy's gate ticked every box for violations. Next, I contacted the tax assessor. If that gate controlled access to a road, it had to have proper licensing and tax documentation. No papers, no gate, I took. Pictures. Detailed close-ups of the padlock, the signs, the fence. Documented every angle like a detective. I even recorded video, walking the length of the fence, describing the violations out loud. It felt good to fight back in my own language. Daithi, language of evidence and rules. Then came the social media angle. I created a page called Rancher Road Toll, posted the story with pictures and a short video. Within hours, neighbors from all around started sharing. Comments poured in. People were outraged. How can an HOA just block a rancher's land like that? Is this even legal? This is the kind of stuff that tears communities apart. The story caught fire. Local news outlets messaged me asking for interviews. One reporter came out with a camera crew. I showed them the fence, the locked gate, the sign. They asked hard questions about the HOA's behavior and what it meant for rural landowners like me. Tracy's smug little kingdom was starting to crumble under the spotlight. That same day, I filed a formal complaint with the county for illegal obstruction of a private road. I attached my evidence, photos, videos, social media posts, eyewitness statements from Manny and neighbors. I knew this was just the start, because Tracy wouldn't go down quietly. Sure enough, 2 days later, a letter arrived at my door from the HOA's lawyer. Demanded I take down my social media posts and retract my statements. Threatened a defamation suit. Typical bullying in legalese. I forwarded the letter to my friend Derek and my own lawyer. They laughed at the threats. They told me to keep pushing. The HOA had overplayed their hand. Then the real fun began. I showed up at the gate one morning. Not on horseback this time, but with a small handheld device. Derek had lent me a simple traffic counter. Normally used for city roads to monitor cars, I mounted it discreetly next to the locked gate. If Tracy wanted to charge people to use that road, she needed to report traffic numbers. So I was going to keep track for her. Word spread fast. Neighbors started coming out. Families with strollers. Farmers with pickups. Kids on bikes. All curious about the barricade that chopped off the countryside. I greeted them warmly, handed out flyers, explaining the situation and my plan. How about we turn this fence into a toll road and make them pay for their arrogance? I joked. We started a small fund, neighbors chipped in. Some for legal fees, others just for the principle. Meanwhile, the county inspector called. They had scheduled a surprise visit to the HOA development citing complaints about unauthorized construction and improper fencing. The day of the inspection, I waited by the gate with Manny, and a handful of neighbors. Tracy showed up, flanked by two sharply dressed attorneys. Her confident smile flickered when she saw the crowd. The inspector walked the fence line, checked permits, examined the gate, snapped photos. When he turned to Tracy, he asked for paperwork on the gate's registration and toll authority. Tracy's eyes darted. Her voice sharpened. "We have all proper documentation," she lied smoothly. The inspector shook his head. "We have no record of any toll permit or gate registration on file." The room went silent. Neighbors exchanged looks. Tracy's facade cracked just a little. The inspector handed her a violation notice. The HOA had 7 days to remove the gate or face daily fines. That night, I posted the news online. The comments exploded. Support poured in from all directions. Even some HOA members started whispering behind Tracy's back. She was losing control, and I was just getting started. I closed the laptop with a satisfied grin. The fence was no longer just a barrier. It was a symbol of the fight. And the gate. That damn gate was now her Achilles heel. The 7th day came like a storm. Tracy woke up to a dozen calls, her phone buzzing nonstop with angry neighbors and reporters hungry for the final act. She stormed into the HOA meeting room wearing a forced smile that didn't reach her eyes. The room was packed. Half the community came to witness the showdown. I stood by the gate with Manny and a few close friends. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Tracy approached the crowd with her usual confidence, but it faltered as I held up the county violation notice in one hand and my phone in the other, streaming the live feed. "People of Hidden Creek," she began, her voice shaky despite the effort to sound firm. "We are working to resolve the situation." Laughter broke out. A few neighbors shouted, "Remove the gate! Respect private property." Her gaze locked on mine. "You have no right to turn this gate into a toll road," she hissed. "Oh, I have every right," I replied calmly, "because you turned my ranch into a prison, and now you're the ones paying the toll." The crowd erupted in cheers and claps. Tracy's face twisted in fury as I laid out my plan. How the county inspection forced their hand. How their lies caught up to them. How every attempt to bully me backfired spectacularly. Then I unveiled the final twist. The toll collection system, connected to a simple app I developed with Derek's help. Every vehicle passing through would be recorded, every payment logged, all funds earmarked for community projects. And legal fees. Tracy's shoulders slumped, her carefully built empire crumbling before her eyes. Her last resort was to storm the gate herself, try to remove the lock. But the moment she touched it, the crowd intervened. Neighbors stepped forward, their unity unshakable. Local police arrived, not to arrest me, but to enforce the county's order against the illegal gate. Tracy was left standing there, humiliated, powerless. The news spread like wildfire. Videos of the confrontation went viral. Memes of Tracy trapped behind the gate flooded social media. One showed her face photoshopped inside a locked box with the caption, "HOA Queen of Fences." In the weeks that followed, the HOA was forced to retract their claims and pay fines. The fence was partially removed, access restored, and the toll road idea turned into a community benefit. A small donation box for local improvements, rather than profit. I stood on my porch one evening watching the sunset paint the sky in golden. U.S. Manny leaned on the fence. The cattle grazed peacefully again. I smiled to myself, knowing that sometimes standing up to the gatekeepers means building your own gate and charging the toll to cross into justice.